People always say the most important moments in life arrive with a warning. Mine began with a random name appearing beside my own on a classroom projector. If someone had asked me that morning whether I believed luck existed, I probably would have laughed. Luck didn't sit 3 rows ahead in communication psychology every Tuesday and Thursday. Luck didn't have messy blonde hair that somehow always looked intentional, bright blue eyes that made conversations feel personal, or the effortless confidence that came from being liked by almost everyone on campus. That was Noah Bennett, and I had been quietly in love with him for 14 months. Not that he knew. As far as Noah was concerned, I was simply Ethan Walker, the quiet psychology major who occasionally partnered with him during discussions and happened to laugh at all the right moments. That was enough. Or at least I kept telling myself it had to be. The lecture hall buzzed with casual conversations while Professor Reynolds connected her laptop to the projector. Stacks of notebooks landed on desks. Coffee cups filled the room with the familiar scent of roasted espresso. Outside, late September sunlight spilled across the university courtyard, painting the maple trees in the first hints of autumn. Professor Reynolds clapped once to gather everyone's attention. "For your semester project," she announced, "you'll be working in pairs." A collective groan echoed across the room. She smiled knowingly. "I promise you'll survive." The first slide appeared behind her. Relationship communication simulation. Several students exchanged confused looks. "This project explores how healthy couples communicate through everyday situations," she continued. "You'll study conflict resolution, emotional support, active listening, and trust. Each pair will role-play different relationship scenarios throughout the semester before presenting your final observations." Someone near the back raised a hand. "So we're pretending to date?" The professor laughed. "Academically speaking, yes." The room immediately erupted into jokes. I barely heard them. My attention remained fixed on the screen as Professor Reynolds clicked to the next slide. Random pair assignments. One by one, names appeared. Emily with Sarah. Jason with Olivia. Ryan with Tyler. Each announcement was followed by scattered applause or playful complaints. My heartbeat remained steady. There were nearly 30 students. The odds meant nothing unusual would happen. Then the projector changed again. Ethan Walker. Noah Bennett. For a second, I genuinely thought I had read it wrong. The room seemed strangely quieter. Someone whistled. Another classmate laughed. "Looks like Noah got lucky." Heat rushed into my face so quickly I was grateful everyone assumed I was embarrassed by the attention rather than completely overwhelmed. Across the room, Noah turned toward me. Our eyes met. He smiled. Not politely. Not awkwardly. Genuinely. "I guess we're partners," he said. His voice carried the same easy warmth I had secretly admired since sophomore year. I somehow managed to answer. "Looks that way." After class, students drifted into the hallway discussing schedules and project ideas. I packed my notebook more slowly than usual, hoping to avoid making the first move. "Ethan." I looked up. Noah stood beside my desk with his backpack slung over one shoulder. "You free after classes tomorrow?" "I think so. There's a coffee shop across from the library." He smiled again. "We could start planning." Every sensible thought reminded me this was only homework. A project. An assignment. Nothing more. Yet as we walked out of the lecture hall together beneath the golden afternoon light, I couldn't ignore the quiet feeling growing inside me. Somewhere between my name and his on that projector screen, the semester I expected had quietly disappeared. Something entirely different had just begun. The easiest roles to play are the ones that quietly reveal who you've wanted to be all along. The next afternoon arrived faster than I expected. I reached the coffee shop across from the university library 10 minutes early, mostly because I knew I wouldn't be able to concentrate anywhere else. Students filled nearly every table, balancing laptops, textbooks, and oversized cups of coffee while soft acoustic music drifted through the speakers. I spotted Noah. Almost immediately. He was already there, seated near the window with a notebook open in front of him. Sunlight filtered through the glass, catching the strands of his blonde hair as he looked up and smiled. "You actually beat me here," he said. "I didn't want to be late." "You weren't kidding when you said you were organized." "I try." He motioned toward the empty chair across from him. "So, Professor Reynolds wants us to become relationship experts." I laughed. "I think she mostly wants us to observe communication." "Still," he replied. Pretending to be a couple for an entire semester is definitely the most creative assignment I've ever had. A server brought over 2 coffees. I guessed your order, Noah admitted. I looked at the cup. Vanilla latte? You mentioned it once after class. You remembered? He shrugged with an easy smile. I pay attention. The simple answer lingered in my thoughts much longer than it probably should have. We spent the next hour reading through the project guidelines. Each week required a different scenario: planning a weekend together, resolving a misunderstanding, supporting a partner during a stressful day, discussing future goals, and navigating everyday disagreements with empathy and respect. This is more detailed than I expected, I said. It almost feels like we're studying real relationships from the inside. Noah leaned back in his chair. Maybe that's the point. After finishing our notes, we walked across campus toward the library courtyard. The afternoon air carried the crisp hint of approaching autumn, and scattered leaves drifted across the brick pathways. We should probably practice outside class too, Noah suggested. You mean rehearse? If we want the conversations to feel natural. I nodded. That makes sense. He looked thoughtful for a moment. How about lunch together a couple of times each week? For research? He grinned. Let's call it that. Over the following days, our schedules slowly began to overlap. We met between lectures, compared assignments, and shared quiet moments in the library that somehow felt easier than studying alone. Every conversation revealed something new. Noah loved old vinyl records. He collected postcards from every city he visited. He preferred early mornings because the campus felt peaceful before everyone else arrived. In return, I found myself telling him things I rarely shared with anyone. Why I chose psychology, how sketching helped me think, and why I always carried a notebook everywhere. By the end of the week, the role play hadn't officially begun. Yet as we crossed the campus together beneath rows of golden maple trees, I realized something unexpected. The assignment was supposed to teach us how couples communicate. Instead, it was quietly teaching me how effortless it felt simply being beside him. Sometimes the people who seem the easiest to understand are the ones carrying the heaviest stories. By the 3rd week of the project, meeting Noah no longer felt unusual. It became part of my routine. Every Tuesday after our afternoon lecture, we claimed the same table on the 2nd floor of the library. Every Thursday, we walked across campus to rehearse the week's communication exercise before heading home. Our classmates had started teasing us. There's the campus couple. You two are getting way too convincing. Noah always laughed. I usually smiled and looked away before anyone noticed my face turning warm. This week's assignment focused on emotional support. One partner had to describe a personal struggle while the other practiced listening without interrupting, judging, or trying to immediately solve the problem. Professor Reynolds reminded everyone of one important rule. Authenticity creates better communication. As Noah and I settled onto a quiet bench beneath a large oak tree outside the student center, he glanced at the worksheet before folding it in half. I don't think reading from this is going to help. So we just talk? I think that's what she wants. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, Noah leaned back and stared toward the fountain in the middle of the courtyard. You go first. I shook my head. I'd rather listen. He smiled faintly. I figured you'd say that. The playful expression slowly disappeared. You know, everyone assumes my life is easy. I stayed silent. My parents own a successful marketing company. He picked at the edge of a fallen leaf beside his shoe. They expect me to join after graduation. I thought that was your plan. So did everyone else. He let out a quiet breath. The truth is, it never felt like my dream. I turned toward him. What is? I want to work in documentary filmmaking. That surprised me. You've never told anyone? A few people. He shrugged. They usually tell me it's unrealistic. The confidence I saw every day seemed to fade. I've spent years pretending I already know exactly who I'm supposed to become. His voice softened. Sometimes I wonder if people only like the version of me that's easy. Without thinking, I answered. I don't. He looked at me. I like the real one. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The sounds of students crossing campus faded into the background. You really mean that? Yeah. His shoulders relaxed, almost as if he had been carrying something far heavier than I realized. Thanks. A small smile returned. Your turn. I laughed nervously. I don't have anything that important. I doubt that. I hesitated before speaking. I've always been afraid of disappointing people. Why? Because I spend so much time wondering whether I'm enough. The words surprised even me. I compare myself to everyone. I look down at my hands. I always think someone else is smarter, funnier, more interesting. Noah answered immediately. I've never seen you that way. You haven't. He shook his head. I see someone thoughtful. He paused. Someone kind. Another heartbeat passed. And someone I genuinely enjoy being around. Those words settled quietly inside me. When the practice session ended, neither of us reached for the assignment sheet again. We walked across the campus together beneath a sky turning shades of orange and blue, talking about music, childhood memories, and dreams that had nothing to do with grades. The exercise was supposed to teach us how to understand another person. Instead, it revealed how much of ourselves we had been quietly waiting for someone else to notice. The hardest part about pretending is the moment your heart forgets it's supposed to be acting. Our final in-class performance arrived on a cool Thursday morning. For nearly a month, Noah and I had practiced every scenario Professor Reynolds assigned. By now, exchanging thoughtful glances or finishing each other's sentences no longer required effort. The habits had become natural, and that realization unsettled me more than I cared to admit. The classroom had been rearranged into a circle, giving every pair space to perform while the rest of the class observed and took notes. Professor Reynolds smiled as she addressed everyone. Today's exercise isn't about perfection. It's about emotional honesty. Show us how two people resolve conflict while protecting their relationship. One pair after another stepped forward. Some performances were funny. Others felt awkward. A few relied on exaggerated drama that made everyone laugh. Then Professor Reynolds looked toward us. Ethan and Noah. My pulse quickened. Noah stood beside me and quietly asked, "Ready?" I answered with a nervous smile. As ready as I'll ever be. Our scenario was simple. One partner had accepted an important internship in another state without discussing it first. The other felt hurt, believing the decision suggested the relationship wasn't a priority. No props. No script. Only conversation. Noah took a slow breath before beginning. I should have told you sooner. His voice sounded calm but sincere. I wasn't trying to shut you out. I looked at him, letting the silence linger for a moment before answering. It wasn't the internship. He watched me carefully. It was feeling like I didn't matter enough to be part of the decision. The room grew unexpectedly quiet. I'm sorry, Noah replied. I kept convincing myself I'd explained everything once I figured it out. And if you never had. His expression softened. I would have lost someone I never wanted to disappoint. Those words landed with surprising weight. I almost forgot we were standing in front of 30 classmates. What scares you the most? I asked, following the exercise. He hesitated only briefly. That the people I care about will stop choosing me once they see every imperfect part. For a heartbeat, I wasn't looking at my project partner. I was looking at Noah. The real Noah. I stepped a little closer. You don't have to earn being cared about. The sentence escaped before I had time to think. You already deserve it. Something changed in his eyes. Not dramatically, just enough that I noticed. Noah smiled, though it wasn't the easy smile everyone on campus knew. It was quieter, more vulnerable. If this relationship were real, he said gently, I'd promise to tell you before making decisions that affect both of us. I answered without hesitation, and I'd promise to listen before assuming the worst. Professor Reynolds finally spoke. Excellent. The applause startled both of us. Several classmates exchanged impressed looks. One whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. They didn't even seem like they were acting. A ripple of laughter followed. I tried to smile, but my thoughts remained fixed on Noah. As class ended, students packed their bags and drifted into the hallway. Neither of us moved immediately. He glanced toward me with an unreadable expression. Coffee. I nodded. Yeah. As we left the classroom side by side beneath the warm afternoon sun, I couldn't stop replaying a single sentence in my mind. If this relationship were real. For the first time since our names appeared together on that projector screen, I wasn't sure where the performance ended. And I wasn't sure I wanted it to. You never notice silence until it comes from the one person whose voice has quietly become part of your day. The week after our classroom performance, everything changed. Not dramatically, not with an argument or misunderstanding. Just distance. The first sign appeared on Monday morning. Instead of waiting outside communication psychology like he usually did, Noah walked into the lecture hall a minute before class began and chose a seat across the room. He still smiled when our eyes met, but it was brief, almost hesitant, before he turned to speak with another student. I told myself I was imagining things. People had busy schedules. Assignments piled up. Life happened. Still, something felt different. After class, I packed my notebook slowly, expecting him to suggest coffee or another practice session out of habit. Instead, he adjusted the strap of his backpack. "I've got to meet with my senior project group," he said. "I'll see you around." Before I could answer, he disappeared into the crowded hallway. For the first time in weeks, I walked across campus alone. The following days followed the same pattern. Our conversations became shorter. Text messages that once received replies within minutes were answered hours later with friendly but careful words. He wasn't rude. He wasn't cold. He simply wasn't there. I replayed every conversation in my mind, searching for the exact moment I might have said something wrong. Nothing stood out. Professor Reynolds officially announced that the relationship simulation project had concluded, congratulating everyone on their presentations. Classmates celebrated as though a heavy weight had finally been lifted. Ironically, mine had only begun. Friday afternoon found me sitting beneath the old maple tree near the student center where Noah and I had shared our most honest conversation weeks earlier. The bench looked exactly the same. The leaves scattered across the ground looked the same. Only the empty space beside me felt unfamiliar. "Mind if I sit?" I looked up. It was Olivia, one of our classmates. "Go ahead." She studied my expression for a second. "You miss him?" "What?" "You and Noah." I forced a laugh. "We're just partners." "Were." Her correction landed harder than I expected. She smiled kindly. "You know, everyone thought you two were actually dating. We were only doing the assignment." "Maybe." She tilted her head. "But some performances are easier than real life." After she left, her words lingered. Was that all it had been? A convincing performance? Had I mistaken kindness for affection? Shared laughter for connection? Perhaps Noah had realized things were becoming too personal and decided to step back before anyone misunderstood, including me. That evening, my phone vibrated. For one hopeful second, I expected Noah's name. Instead, it was a campus notification reminding students about next week's career networking event. I stared at the blank conversation thread. Between us, the last message I had sent simply read, "Hope your presentation went well today." His reply had arrived 5 hours later. "Thanks." It did. Nothing more. No smile. No follow-up question. No invitation to meet. I slipped my phone into my pocket and continued walking beneath the glowing campus lights. The role-play assignment had officially ended. Maybe Noah was simply returning to the life he had before it began. But as the cool evening breeze carried the sound of distant laughter across the university courtyard, I realized something painful. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped pretending, and I wasn't sure my heart knew how to go back. The truth has a strange way of finding you only after you've convinced yourself it no longer matters. 2 weeks passed without anything changing. Noah remained friendly whenever we crossed paths on campus, but the easy rhythm we had built together had quietly disappeared. We exchanged polite greetings before continuing in opposite directions, as though the weeks we had spent learning each other's dreams belonged to another lifetime. I stopped expecting my phone to light up with his name. That didn't stop me from looking. Friday afternoon brought the annual career networking fair to the student union. Booths from graduate schools, nonprofit organizations, and media companies filled the ballroom, while students wandered between recruiters carrying folders and resumes. I almost skipped the event. Instead, I convinced myself it would be a welcome distraction. After speaking with representatives from 2 counseling programs, I stepped into the hallway to escape the noise. Through the tall windows, October sunlight stretched across the campus lawn, where students relaxed between classes. "Hey, Ethan." I turned. It was Ava, another student from communication psychology. She smiled as she joined me. "I haven't seen you and Noah together lately." I forced a casual shrug. "The project ended. So that's it, I guess." She looked unconvinced. "You know he talks about you all the time." My heart stumbled. "What?" Ava blinked. "You didn't know?" I shook my head. She laughed softly. "I thought everyone knew." I stared at her. "He asked me once whether I thought you'd be uncomfortable if he invited you to a film festival downtown." I couldn't find the right words. "He never asked. Because he talked himself out of it." She folded her arms. "He kept saying he didn't want you to think the assignment meant something different." Everything around me seemed strangely distant. "He said that?" She nodded. I've never seen Noah overthink anything the way he overthought you. Before I could ask another question, someone called Ava's name from inside the ballroom. She smiled apologetically. I should go. She hesitated for a second. For what it's worth. Her expression softened. I don't think he walked away because he stopped caring. Then she disappeared back into the crowd. I remained standing in the hallway long after she was gone. Every conversation Noah and I had shared replayed in my mind. The coffee shop, the library, the afternoon beneath the oak tree, the role-play presentation, the quiet distance afterward. Had we both been protecting ourselves from exactly the same fear? As I stepped outside, a familiar voice carried across the courtyard. Ethan. I turned so quickly I almost dropped the folder in my hands. Noah stood several yards away beside the campus fountain. He looked nervous. It was the first time I had ever seen him that way. He walked toward me slowly before stopping just close enough for neither of us to raise our voices. I've been looking for you. I thought you were avoiding me. I was. The honesty surprised me. I didn't know what to do. His eyes searched mine. The project ended. I know. But my feelings didn't. The world seemed to fall completely silent. Students continued walking around us. Bicycles crossed the brick paths. Somewhere nearby, church bells marked the passing hour. None of it reached me. I kept telling myself everything we shared belonged to the assignment. Noah whispered. He smiled sadly. Then I realized the only thing that was pretend was the assignment itself. For the first time since our names had appeared together on that classroom projector, hope felt stronger than fear. And somehow, I knew our real story was only just beginning. Love doesn't become real the moment someone says the words. It becomes real the moment two people decide to stop running from them. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. The fountain continued to ripple behind Noah while students crossed the courtyard, completely unaware that my world had just shifted. You mean that? I finally asked. He let out a slow breath. I've replayed every conversation we've had since Professor Reynolds paired us together. A quiet laugh escaped him. I kept trying to convince myself I only missed working on the project. His eyes met mine, but I wasn't missing the assignment. He smiled with gentle embarrassment. I was missing you. Every doubt I had carried over the past 2 weeks began to dissolve. I thought you regretted getting close to me. No. He shook his head immediately. I regretted pretending I could go back to how things were before. I looked down for a moment, searching for words that suddenly seemed too small. I've liked you since last year. Noah blinked. What? I never expected anything to happen. I laughed softly at myself. When our names appeared together on that projector, I honestly thought the universe was playing a joke on me. His expression shifted from surprise to disbelief. You've been carrying that around this whole time? I nodded. I figured telling you would only make things awkward. Instead of answering, Noah stepped a little closer. I spent weeks wondering whether every smile you gave me was just because we were partners. I couldn't help smiling. It wasn't. The tension that had surrounded us for days quietly disappeared. So, Noah said, rubbing the back of his neck. I have a question. What is it? If this isn't homework anymore. He hesitated before finishing. Would you let me take you on an actual date? The question was simple. No dramatic speech. No audience. Just honesty. I felt my heart race anyway. I'd like that. His smile returned, brighter than I had seen in weeks. Good. He laughed. Because I've already planned one. You have. I was hoping I'd eventually get the courage to ask. What did you have in mind? The film festival downtown. I stared at him. The one you wanted to invite me to before? His eyebrows lifted. Ava told you. She accidentally did. He covered his face for a second. I can't believe she ruined my surprise. I don't mind. I laughed. Actually, I'm glad she did. We began walking across campus without deciding who should move first. The familiar brick paths somehow looked different now. The library where we had spent countless afternoons studying stood ahead of us, its windows reflecting the fading sunlight. You know, Noah said, Professor Reynolds is going to think her project was a bigger success than she imagined. Maybe it was. He glanced toward me. You think so? She wanted us to understand healthy communication. I smiled. I guess we finally learned how. Noah reached for my hand before hesitating halfway. Can I? Instead of answering with words, I gently slipped my fingers into his. The gesture felt surprisingly natural. Neither rushed. Neither looked away. For the first time, there was nothing to rehearse, nothing to analyze, and no imaginary relationship to perform. As we continued toward the library beneath a sky painted with soft shades of orange and violet, I realized something beautifully unexpected. The best part of our story had never been falling in love. It was discovering that, all along, we had been walking toward each other at exactly the same pace. The first real date is never about where you go. It's about discovering whether ordinary moments still feel extraordinary together. Saturday arrived with clear skies and the cool breeze of early October. I stood outside the downtown art theater 10 minutes before noon, pretending to study the posters displayed behind the glass. In reality, I glanced toward the sidewalk every few seconds. Then Noah appeared. He wore a navy jacket over a white sweater, his hands tucked into his pockets as he crossed the street. The moment he spotted me, the nervous smile on his face matched exactly how I felt. I was worried I'd be late, he admitted. You still beat the movie trailers. I'll take that as a success. For a brief second, neither of us knew whether to hug or simply wave. The hesitation disappeared when Noah stepped forward and wrapped me in a quick embrace. It was simple, comfortable, real. Inside the theater, the documentary festival featured independent films from young directors around the country. Noah's attention immediately shifted toward every camera angle, every scene transition, every conversation about storytelling. Watching him became almost as interesting as watching the screen. You really love this, I whispered after one film ended. I do. His eyes lit up. I always forget everything else when I'm watching people tell honest stories. I smiled. I noticed. When the afternoon screenings finished, we wandered through the nearby streets lined with bookstores, cafes, and small music shops. Without the pressure of a classroom assignment, conversation flowed even more naturally. No pretending, no rehearsed dialogue, only curiosity. At a quiet record store, Noah stopped in front of a display filled with vintage vinyl albums. My dad used to play these every Sunday morning, he said. I picked up an old jazz record. My grandfather collected them too. For nearly half an hour, we traded childhood memories inspired by songs neither of us had heard in years. Later, we carried hot chocolate to a riverside park where golden leaves drifted across the walking paths. The city felt peaceful. Families rode bicycles. Children chased pigeons near the fountain. Street musicians filled the air with soft melodies. This is nice, Noah said. It is. He looked toward the river before speaking again. You know what scares me now? I turned to him. What? Messing this up? You won't. How can you be sure? Because we've already done the hardest part. He raised an eyebrow. Which was being honest. He considered that for a moment before nodding. I guess pretending was more difficult than telling the truth. As the sun slowly lowered behind the buildings, Noah reached for my hand. This time, he didn't ask permission. Neither did I let go. We continued walking side by side until the city lights began reflecting across the water. When he finally drove me back to campus, neither of us seemed eager for the evening to end. I had a really good time, I said. So, did I? He smiled before adding quietly, better than any role play. I laughed. Not even close. As I watched him drive away, I realized something had changed inside me. For months, I had dreamed about what it would feel like if my crush ever became part of my life. The reality wasn't louder or more dramatic than I imagined. It was calmer, safer, and somehow, that made it infinitely more beautiful. The most beautiful love stories don't end with a perfect moment. They continue with two people choosing each other, again and again. Spring arrived almost before either of us noticed. The bare branches that had framed our first conversations slowly filled with fresh green leaves, and the university campus seemed brighter with every passing week. Noah and I settled into a rhythm that felt surprisingly natural. Some afternoons we studied together in the library. Other days we explored small cafes hidden around the city or attended local film screenings simply because they made him smile. There were no dramatic declarations after our first date. No impossible obstacles waiting around the corner. Only ordinary days becoming extraordinary because we shared them. One afternoon, Professor Reynolds stopped us outside the psychology building. I've been meaning to ask, she said with a knowing smile. How's life after the project? Noah glanced at me before answering. It turned out to be more educational than either of us expected. She laughed. I suspected that might happen. As she walked away, I shook my head. I think she knew long before we did. I wouldn't be surprised. Near the end of the semester, the university hosted its annual student showcase. Photography exhibits lined one hallway. Short films filled another. Noah had finally submitted his first documentary, a quiet piece about students searching for purpose while balancing family expectations and personal dreams. Watching his name appear on the screen before the film began filled me with a sense of pride I couldn't describe. When the audience applauded after the credits, Noah looked almost overwhelmed. "You did it," I whispered. He smiled. "I almost didn't. But you did." He squeezed my hand. "Because someone convinced me my dreams were worth believing in." Later that evening, we walked across the nearly empty campus. The fountain where everything had changed months earlier reflected the lights from nearby buildings, and the air carried the familiar scent of blooming flowers. "I've been thinking," Noah said. "About what?" "The first day of class." I laughed. "The projector?" "Yeah." He smiled to himself. "If Professor Reynolds had arranged the pairs alphabetically instead of randomly, we probably wouldn't be here." "No." He stopped walking. "I don't think we would." For a quiet moment, neither of us spoke. Then Noah reached into his backpack. "I have something for you." He handed me a small notebook with a dark blue cover. Inside the first page, he had written a single sentence. "Every great story begins with one unexpected choice." Beneath the words was a photograph. It showed the two of us standing outside the downtown theater after our first official date, smiling at each other instead of the camera. "I asked someone to take it without telling you," Noah admitted. "It's my favorite picture." I looked back at him. "I think it's mine too." He leaned forward and gently kissed my forehead before resting his hand in mine once more. As we continued walking beneath the evening sky, I realized our story had never truly been about a classroom assignment, pretend relationships, or perfect timing. It was about two people who accidentally found the courage to be honest because fate placed their names side by side. Sometimes love begins with fireworks. Sometimes it begins with friendship. And sometimes it begins with a role play that quietly teaches two hearts they never needed to pretend at all. If anyone ever asked how our relationship started, we'd probably smile before answering the same way. It all began with a random pairing in class. But between the two of us, we'd always know the truth. It was never random. It was the beginning of forever.